Greetings and thank you so much for joining me today. So this video is going to begin Module 3, which is a discussion and review of ethics in psychological science. And so this video is going to focus on simply defining what ethics are and the various perspectives on ethics. Okay, so the Discovering the Scientist Within text that you guys may or may not have purchased defines ethics as the application of moral principles concerning what an individual considers right and wrong to help guide one to one's decisions and behavior, right? So that's kind of a highfalutin definition. So let's go ahead and look at some actual ethical scenarios to help us along. Okay, so consider this scenario. Prior to the midterm in your Introduction to Psychology course, the professor informs the class rather, that a copy of the midterm has mysteriously disappeared from her office. She says that if the guilty party does not come forward, all 100 students in the class will receive a 0. Due to your university's strict honor code, the dean will certainly expel the person who stole the exam. And you know that it was your best friend who took the exam. So this is an incredibly difficult situation, right? So consider you have two options, right? So you could stay quiet, okay? And basically that means that you and 99 other people get hurt, right? Because you get a 0 on the exam. That could potentially hurt your GPA and chances of getting into graduate school, both you and your classmates, right? So there's an obvious cost there, right? But the benefit is that you save your relationship with your friend, right? So obviously you don't want to betray your friend, and so if you stay quiet, the benefit is that that won't happen. And the inverse is true if you speak up, right? So if you speak up, you are saving your academic career and that of 99 other people, right? But if you speak up, you betray your friend and you lose that friendship, right? So no matter how you look at it or which of those two options you choose, right, there's going to be a cost and a benefit, right? So whenever we consider ethical dilemmas, primarily what characterizes an ethical dilemma is the tension that it creates between potential costs and benefits, right? So you have to decide, in essence, when you're trying to solve an ethical dilemma, whether the whether the benefits outweigh the costs or not. And as psychologists, as scientists, when we're designing research studies, that's the same question that we get confronted with is by conducting this study, do the benefits of this research outweigh the potential costs, specifically the potential costs to our participants? So again, let's look at 3 different ethical perspectives. Okay, so first we have the utilitarian perspective. And the utilitarian perspective says that your decision should do the greatest good for the greatest number of people, right? So if you were to apply a utilitarian perspective to the scenario that I just shared with you, right, almost certainly you would decide to speak up because you would be saving, in essence, yourself as well as 99 other people, right? The altruistic perspective involves helping others without personal benefit, right? So from this viewpoint, the best action is the most selfless action. But there's no really clear-cut answer to our scenario with the altruistic perspective, right? Because although that person who adheres to this perspective may decide that it's more selfless to take a 0 on the midterm, right? So one option is they could decide it's more selfless to take a 0 on the midterm or to sacrifice a friendship for the good of the class, right? But maybe an altruistic perspective would also say that it's selfish to prioritize the well-being of one's own grade for the benefit over the benefit to one's friend, right? So it's a little more ambiguous there what the altruistic perspective, what solution the altruistic perspective would promote. Okay? And lastly, there's an egoist or egoist perspective or egoism, okay, which is pretty self-explanatory. It just states that individuals should act in accordance with their own self-interest, right? So depending upon which cost is greater, the cost to one's academic career or the loss of a friendship, probably the former. A person who subscribes to an egoist perspective would probably choose to speak up and save their own grade, right? Okay, so that's just a very quick review of different ethical perspectives. So again, utilitarian perspective says we should act in accordance with the view that we want to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. The altruistic perspective says we should choose the most selfless course of action. And egoism says I'm always going to look out for myself or look out for number one, right? All right, so that concludes this kind of brief video on ethical perspectives. And in my next video, I'm going to talk about historical violations of ethical principles, or scientists from all different branches of science who have kind of breached ethical codes in pretty profound ways. Okay? All right, so I'll see you in my next video on historical violations of ethics in science.